So here's behavior problems. And you see more or less the same thing. And there my 0 point is lined up correctly with the line. And you can see that there's a pivot that happens around high school exit. But the particular change in these maladaptive behavior problems depends upon whether you have intellectual disability or not, and also your income. So let me walk you through this. So there's more behavior problems. Again, a high score is more behavior problems. There's more behavior problems for those who have intellectual disability as compared to those who do not. And that's been well established by many, many studies. Both groups improve while they're in high school. In other words, their behavior problems become less severe. In high school, the differences between those with lower or higher income are not apparent. In other words, the dotted lines are the lower income, the solid lines are the higher income, and they're sitting right on top of each other. So they all improve regardless of income during high school. And when they leave high school, the story sort of fans out. So if you look at those who have intellectual disability, the red lines, those from families with higher incomes continue to improve. That line continues to go down. Their symptoms reduce. But those individuals who have intellectual disability from low-income families actually get worse in their behavior problems when they leave high school. You could see that line creep up. And you also see the worsening with people who do not have intellectual disability, the blue line. That after they leave high school, those who are from low-income families, the dotted line, their behavior problems get worse. And the rate of change in even those with higher income slows down of those without intellectual disabilities, those with typical range of intelligence. So what this is saying to us is that rather than high school exit being a time where people's behavior improves because they're under less stress, it actually is a period of time where the rate of improvement mainly it slows down, and for people who come from poorer families, they're at risk of having increased behavior problems after they leave high school. And when we think about what could possibly be causing this, to some extent we have to think about when people leave high school. They don't all leave at the same stage of life. In our study, the youngest time when an individual with an autism spectrum disorder left high school was age 17, and the oldest was age 22. So there's a big range in there in terms of when they leave high school, and then there's also a range in what happens to these individuals when they leave high school. And sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Some people, specifically those who have intellectual disability, an IQ of 70 or below, they're much more likely to be absorbed into the developmental disability service system, at least in Wisconsin and at least in Massachusetts, than are those whose IQ scores are high. And I think to some extent that better pattern, it's not a better pattern, but the continued improvement that you see for those with intellectual disabilities may be because they're entering an adult service system, and those who have autism but not intellectual disabilities are much less likely to have a post-high school set of services that are as rich and comprehensive. And I'll show you some specifics on that in a minute. Another thing, and this is about the low-income families, how do we find jobs for our kids? I have 2 daughters who are adult, and they're not disabled, but when they left college and it was time for them to find a job, I did a little networking and I called around, and I'm not sure it helped. I think they got the jobs on their own, but you try to call people to see what you can work out on behalf of your children or grandchildren. And if you're from a low-income family, it may be that you have fewer friends and family members who have jobs or who have opportunities that you can call upon. And I think that it may be more than that, but it's at least, I think that. It's my interpretation of that worsening for those who come from families who are on the lower end of the income spread. And again, we did not have many families really living in deep poverty. So I think this is an important thing for us to advocate on behalf of our friends and family members, our friends who are similarly parents and grandparents of children on the autism spectrum, but who may not be as well off as others. Okay, so moving ahead, and I know we're getting a little bit short on time, I want to tell you about some recent work that we've been doing under Leanne Smith's leadership that I think, again, points to the need for advocating for services. And then I'd like to finish up with telling you about that Transitioning Together program. Maybe this is something you'd like to think about starting here in Orange County. So functional abilities or activities of daily living, ADLs, they're the skills we need to get through the day: personal care, bathing, grooming, dressing, mealtime activities, eating, preparing food, setting and clearing the table, washing the dishes, housekeeping, laundry, household tasks, and running errands, money management, things like that. And these are the skills that we need our adults to have in order to get through the day and live a good life. It's not all the things you need, but you see, these are like the basic skills. And we developed a scale that we adapted from other purposes, a 17-item scale that measured these skills that I just mentioned. So a score of 0 is that they don't have the skill at all. 1 is they perform the skill with help. And 2 is that they're independent on this set of activities. And so if you do the math, the maximum score is 34. And we've actually been using this measure for lots of years in this study and also in a prior study of adolescents and adults with Down syndrome. So I'm going to show you data about the age-related change in these daily living skills in our sample of individuals with, So this is what happened. I'm sorry about this. The background, something happened to the background. But just ignore the background and just look at the lines. And this is the score. These are the scores on this measure of activities of daily living for our sample of adolescents and adults with autism, divided between those who have intellectual disability and those who do not. Those who have intellectual disability are the red line, and there you see that they have lower level of expertise in activities of daily living than those without intellectual disability, which is not surprising. I mean, some of these call upon intellectual skills like money management and running errands and shopping for food. But there is an acquisition, especially for those with IQs above 70, of skills during the adolescent years, and then it peaks at around age 35. And then there's a hint of some decline subsequently. That decline may be, I think we should be cautious in our interpretation of that decline because not that many people are in the oldest group of our sample, and so a small number of people may be characterizing that decline. But basically the message here is that there's an increase in these skills of daily living, especially among those with, without intellectual disability during the adult years. This is the data for Down syndrome, and I'm going to put the two side by side. So this is what the other slide should have looked like. And what you see is that all of the individuals with Down syndrome have intellectual disability. And they are actually able to perform these tasks, these activities of daily living skills, at a higher level than those with autism who also have intellectual disability. And this is like an aspirational goal of ours, it should be, that we help our young adults, our adolescents and our young adults with autism acquire these skills of daily life so that they can function as well as their counterparts who have the diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I'm not trying to hold up Down syndrome in particular, but we happen to have the same measures at the same ages of their life as those that we have within autism. And you see that the acquisition sort of continues pretty late in life for those with Down syndrome. Again, we don't have that many people in the older range, so we can't really determine how substantial that conclusion is about it continuing to improve. But even if you compare the level of those with Down syndrome, they're about equal to those with autism diagnoses who do not have intellectual disability. And this is something that I think the adult service world needs to focus in on, is how can we prepare our young adults to be more independent in daily living skills? And those were data that we have just analyzed. It represents about a 10-year period in the life of each person, organized around their age. And I think that it's a disturbing set of findings, and I think that although we need to be cautious about the interpretation of trends at older age, it tells me that we need to focus on helping adolescents and adults with ASD acquire these skills of daily living and also maintain their skills, especially as they get into their 30s, where there may be some hints of those beginning to lose those skills. And we don't know why the differences are, the diagnostic differences that we saw appear.